June 27, 1960, Groot was born. Created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby. December 6, 2024, Marvel Rivals launches to the public. So, the question is simple. How did he go from looking like this to looking like this? Welcome to Comic Evolution, the show where I answer that exact question. Fair warning, this gameplay is gonna be dog water. I cannot play Groot to save my life. So, take a sip every time I die. Back to 1960 we go. Stan Lee and Larry Lieber share credit for Groot's creation, but let's be real, most of the honor belongs to the king, Jack Kirby. His work ethic and output still haven't been matched, and to this day, he's widely considered the greatest to ever draw comics. Hence, the nickname. Now, this is not the Groot you know from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Early Groot was a villain. He spoke in full sentences. He is not gentle. He did not have a heart of gold. Quite the opposite, actually. Groot debuted in Tales to Astonish, number 13, and on the cover he's depicted as a towering giant looming over city skyscrapers mid-ransack. Back then, Groot was basically a tree-flavored kaiju from Planet X. Real subtle stuff, folks. On the cover, he's gray, but inside the book, he's brown. One solid, dookie-like hue, brown. Absolutely putrid. And look, I love Jack Kirby. He's responsible for some of the hardest character designs in comic book history. Let's be honest, some of his designs are questionable, this being one of them. Groot wasn't a hit, and I can't imagine why. About 16 years later, Marvel dusts off Groot for the Incredible Hulk Annual 1976. The cover is by John Romita Sr. with interiors by Sal Buscema. And here, Groot is all brown, all the way through, and somehow even uglier. His first line in the book isn't the now iconic "I am Groot." Instead, he announces, "It is Groot, the monster from Planet X." Which is especially funny because in this multi-story digest, the previous story features a monster saying, "I am taboo." They were so close. And that's what I find so interesting about comic books and their potential for exploring narrative fiction. They're a playground, a place to workshop characters, designs, and even catchphrases in real time. You can keep what works and ditch what doesn't. Since comics are inherently a collaborative process, one artist may see potential where another artist sees nothing but failure. With the benefit of hindsight, you can see the gears turning. They may not have known it at the time, but they were definitely onto something here. Moments like this are why I find character evolution so interesting. Watching clunky, half-baked ideas slowly transform into fully realized characters, beloved by millions, is the funnest part of all time. So yeah, I roasted Groot at the beginning for being ugly, but it's that ugliness that makes him so fascinating and beautiful. Sal Buscema is a solid artist, and I'd argue he's the perfect dude to handle Groot at this awkward stage in his evolution. 21 more years would pass before Groot shows up again. This time in Peter Parker's dream in Sensational Spider-Man #1 in 1997. He's still a giant, one-dimensional bad guy who speaks in full sentences. The most interesting thing about Groot at this point isn't his design or his personality, it's the massive gaps between appearances. There's still very little actual evolution happening, just a character waiting to be rediscovered. 8 more years go by. 2005, Monsters on the Prowl, written by Steve Niles and Duncan Federigo. Not only does Groot still talk, but Ben Grimm actually calls it out by saying, "Oh great, we got a talker here." Groot is still just a towering giant, and he's not shown to be able to change his size just yet. In this comic, he's part of the Collector's Collection, from what I can gather. Federigo is sticking Groot pretty close to the original concept. Nick Fury's Howling Commandos came out in 2006, and here we get an interesting development in Groot's design. While in issue 2, Groot is still depicted as a giant, by issue 4, he becomes the size we know him as today in an environment we're familiar with him being in, a prison. This is the first time that I found, at least, where Groot can manipulate his size. That's evolution, baby. Here Groot's head looks to be getting rounder too. He's becoming recognizable and not just an abstract mess of twigs and branches. Out of all the silhouettes I've covered so far on this show, Groot's is one that has changed the most wildly over the years. 2007, Annihilation Conquest, written by Keith Giffen and drawn by Timothy Green II. I'll just tell you folks, off of Front Street, this is my favorite Groot design of all time. This is the book where Peter Quill is aligned with what would become the Guardians of the Galaxy. Groot became insta-locked with Rocket Raccoon from day one. Groot looks so cool in this team shot. his head is no longer round, nor is it amorphous. All the branches seem intentional and add to his overall imposing figure. There is no way you can say that this is a weak silhouette. In 2008, we finally got a familiar version of the Guardians of the Galaxy written by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning and penciled by Paul Pelletier. In this story, Groot shows us his power of regeneration. As long as any matter of him remains, Groot can be regrown. So at the beginning of this run, Groot is at the beginning stages of growth. This is important to note because this stage of regrowth is depicted much differently here than it is in the movies. Here, Baby Groot is the same as Big Groot, just really small. The movies had to make him like a cute mascot to sell toys or whatever. A few issues into the run, Groot has regrown to his proper size. He's still a giant, don't get me wrong, but he's more like a 20-foot giant and not a 50-story kaiju. When he gets back to normal size, he throws on a Guardians uniform and I think he looks much better without it. I might become known as the YouTuber that wants all superheroes to be naked, and Groot really isn't helping my case over here. Groot is a much stronger design sans outfit. I want to see all that organic tree-like goodness. His physique, if you could even call it that, adds to his presence and aura. This Groot is still using other words other than I am Groot, but they do seem to be developing something when he says, I am Groot, I am help. The days of huge gaps between appearances are over. Groot has now appeared every single year over the last 2 decades, but I'm personally going to keep to the tradition and skip about 5 years and go straight to the year 2013 for a Guardians of the Galaxy run by Brian Michael Bendis and drawn by Steve McNiven and Sarah Pichelli. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest Bendis guy, but McNiven and Pichelli's artwork really sings here. Like, this illustration of Star-Lord is simply stunning, but we're here to talk about Groot. Unfortunately, I gotta say, this Groot ain't hitting for me, folks. He's far too spiky and angular. This Groot looks even more sinister here than when he was a bad guy. He must be fixed. Hey, James Gunn, can I borrow you for a minute? 2014, Groot Goes Hollywood. I want to keep this section pretty brief, even though it's arguably the most important part of Groot's entire evolution, and more importantly, my third most favorite of his designs. I will say, however, that the movie version of Groot is probably the most palatable version for general audiences. He's big, but not too big. He's tree-like, but he's imbued with a heavy dose of humanity. His vocabulary now consists of only 3 words. This version of Groot's design aesthetic is extremely appealing and relatable. The movie version of Baby Groot is your typical hollow Hollywood attempt at creating a mascot, and to be fair, this time it actually works. Moving back to the comics for Groot's 2015 solo series. That's right, pals. Groot went from being a hideous deep cut to 60 years later being given his own solo run written by Jeff Loveness and drawn by Brian Kessinger. This version of Groot, while being very cartoony, is also extremely expressive and appealing. Kessinger is great at drawing Groot in a wide array of dynamic poses and angles, which would be quite a challenge given Groot's atypical and asymmetrical design. Fast forward 9 more years, 2024, Marvel Rivals. Okay, and here he is. Here is Groot from Marvel Rivals. And now that I'm looking at him a little bit more closely, I might say that this is the best Groot design of all time. I know earlier I said that other design was my favorite one from Annihilation Conquest, but I'm going to change my mind here now that I'm looking at this one a little bit closely. Because you still get that hint of humanity that really makes Groot Groot. And that comes through in this design. I also love all the little details. He's not just a tree. He has all these crystals in his shoulders and stuff. And those shoulder crystals are also his eyeballs and his life force underneath all of this tree stuff that goes on over top of that. I love the fact that he has an exoskeleton and all of these little leaves that pop up off of him. I think he looks great. And the fact that he's got this little daisy here with the butterfly on his finger, absolutely adorable. And I'm not done gushing grannies over this design yet. This head shape, beautiful. The branches coming off the head is like a crown, gorgeous. I love the shoulder spike on one side. It's a little bit asymmetrical because the other shoulder, while it does have a spike, it's not quite the same spike. This all feels very organic. And on top of that, he's got all sorts of fungus growing on him as well. You know, all these mushrooms here on the ankles, these mushrooms on his hands. This is a beautiful design. And the wood grain over here, the way it overlaps to create his chest, the way it overlaps to create his pelvis and thighs and everything, this is a stunning design. This is beautiful. I'm not going to lie, Marvel Rivals absolutely nailed it yet again. And of course, he has more than just this design. This is the design from the Guardians Volume 3, the third movie, which I don't love as much, but it kind of looks like a lot like Jack Kirby's original design, big and gray, with these two big trunk branches coming out of his head or whatever, these thick-ass legs. It's okay. I'm not a huge fan of it though. And like I was saying earlier, you throw a uniform on it and it actually takes away from everything that makes Groot. And I think this illustrates it all very well, because you want to see all that tree-like goodness. It's like, no, take it off, Groot. Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. He puts it all on. Nah, big buddy, I'm not a big fan. And that's going to be the end of today's episode on Groot. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to hit like and press subscribe. Until my next upload, watch another upload. Okay, goodbye, see you later, and have a good one.